I am not yucking on the San Diego Padres for signing Jackson Merrill. Yesterday, they announced a 9-year, $135 million deal. Jackson Merrill, you may remember, was a rookie last year. You may remember that he was an instrumental player, a big-time addition to the Padres. And you may remember that this is the same Padres team that signs and signs and signs players to more and more unreasonable contracts, builds their payroll up, and then brings it down. Their current payroll at about $200 million is about ninth in baseball, which is still relatively high, even given their attendance, given the size of their market, given the division in which they are competing. It is very hard for them to sustain a payroll at this level. So you put together your team, you sign a bunch of players to contracts, and then you think about what impact it will have, who you'll have to move. You take Juan Soto, you let him go. You take Josh Hader, you let him go. Some players you want to hang on to and give them this certainty. Jackson Merrill is a great example of a player who has a really good chance to be a really good major leaguer over a really long period of time. But when you sign him to a 9-year deal, what you're saying is, we're done. We're good. We now don't have to think about slumps. We don't have to think about performance. We can hope for overperformance, but we don't have to worry about the ups and the downs that could come with your performance as it relates to payroll and how much you get paid, because we have now delivered certainty to us as a business and to you as a player. The thing is that these bets that are made by teams when they're signing young players to really big deals with no discount, they haven't worked. And they haven't worked from the beginning when it started with John Singleton way back over 10 years ago. And they haven't worked all the way up to and including what the White Sox did with Robert and Jimenez, etc. I dare say that what the Padres have done hasn't worked with even Fernando Tatis. If you're watching right now, you're seeing notable pre-arbitration deals in recent years. If you're listening to the show, we have a list starting with things like the Tigers with Colt Keith just January of last year. Julio Rodriguez with that huge deal from the Mariners, supposed to be a superstar, and he may be. But every year, each of these teams is forced to mark these contracts to market. I want to explain the concept, and then I want to go back to Jackson Merrill a bit, Coca. The concept of marking a player to market is you take a player, you take the player's salary, then you say what that player would get on a 1-year deal in free agency. Then you take the difference between the 1-year free agent number and the actual pay that the player's receiving. So if you've got a player who's getting paid $5 million, who becomes the National League MVP and hits 50 home runs, and as a free agent, he'd get $40 million, you are immediately a plus 35. If you are paying a player $5 million who normally would not be on your team or would be a reserve, a utility infielder, and he would be barely anything above replacement at the minimum, and the minimum's $1 million for argument's sake, that's a -4. When you are building your team and you are not in the positive, you are not going to win. It is clear as day. It has been proven year after year with teams. We would go under the exercise and go through the exercise of marking players to market every single season. How else to evaluate the job we're doing? Jackson Merrill, upon the announcement of his deal, talked about this in a backwards way, and I want to let you hear what he said and then interpret it for you.
Just even hearing like an opportunity to sign with the San Diego Padres is enough for me, you know, but I also feel like there comes a line where you know your worth, you know your value. Listen, I know like there's contracts out there that are beyond absurd. They're super amounts of money, but having a relationship with a real human being and a real team like I have here, you can't beat that, you know? You can't just sign for $700 million and want everything to be perfect, you know? I got people all around the clubhouse that are supporting me, supporting my family, you know? They ask about my personal life every day, so I'm just gracious for that, and I know that's going to be the same way for the next 9 years.
He meant grateful for that. And hold your ears, Mets fans, please, because what Jackson Merrill just said ought to make you shimmy in your boots. Obviously, there's only one $700 million player, because I don't think he means Ohtani. The assumption is he's talking about Juan Soto. Juan Soto, who was a Padre. Juan Soto, who many people in the Padres organization were just fine having him disappear. Could it be possible that there's members of the Yankees organization who are also fine with Juan Soto not being on the team? Is it possible that Juan Soto has been an issue inside the clubhouse for years and years? I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying no. Yes. What I am saying is that Jackson Merrill had an interesting comment about the absurd level of contracts. As we head into a CBA negotiation, players are given talking points by the union and by union leadership. One of the talking points is not at your press conference talking about the absurd amount of money the players are getting paid. That, of course, was a mistake. What Jackson Merrill was saying is when a player gets his worth and he's offered his worth, you sign a contract. Isn't that the case in every single business and every single deal you've ever done, where both sides say, not thrilled, not perfect, but I think that's about fair. That sounds about right. When you go through Jackson Merrill's deal, it sounds about right now. But the thing is that owners and presidents and GMs don't have any other choice but to say, hey, that sounds right. Let's get this done. Then years pass, and then you get silent. You don't talk about, if you're the White Sox, what happened with the contracts that didn't work out. You don't talk about, when you're the Phillies, what happened with Scott Kingery. Why would that even come up, the fact that you wasted $24 million on him? It wouldn't. I don't hear Jerry DiPoto talking to us about Evan White and that disaster of a contract with the Mariners that was signed in 2019. I don't really hear anybody with the White Sox talking. I don't even hear anybody with the Rays and how genius they are saying, man, that Wander Franco deal, that was a stinker. I don't even think we're hearing the Brewers and the great front office led by Matt Arnold talking to you about Jackson Churio, who just in December of 23 got $82 million. The guy hadn't played a game. I don't think you're going to hear much, because as he gets mark to market over the years, we're going to have to wait to see how it works. Listen, you all made fun, and I remember this clear as day, Coca. When I was critical, and I bet you there's people in the chat live right now, Nothing Personal with David Samson. Get into the YouTube chat. We are live every day at 8 a.m. I assume that many of you would say, oh, there's Samson, the owner, hack, shilling, saying all these contracts are bad. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that you have to be right. And it's really hard with a young player to be right. Do you remember when Acuna signed with the Braves? What year was that, Coca? I don't remember the year. He signed a deal, and people were making fun of him, as I recall. The fact that he signed, and how could he have signed for so little? It makes no sense. He's the greatest player ever. You realize, of course, that Acuna, who had a season to die for, literally, how good he was. He's pretty much been hurt since. Forget the fact, I'm not impugning the Braves at 0-7. It's a long season. I'm not saying they're out of it, because all their hitters are hitting below 200. Long season. I'm saying that Acuna is going to come back, and I actually picked the Braves to win the division. But when you look at marking Acuna to market, here's what happens when you don't play. You don't get paid in the system where you mark a player's contract to market. You get paid in the system of the real world when you have guaranteed dollars coming, and you have guaranteed dollars over a long period of time. But front offices right now are being pretty consistent. They value certainty more than marking players to market.